Grave Digger Queen here, and we have a new story. I love the Bob Evans of it all. I love the small town where everyone knows your name. I used to live in Amphipolis up in Greece, and we had a small town community. But enough about me. The name of tonight's story is Farmer Sampson's Secret by Harlii. The storm hadn't let up. The rain still poured in thick sheets soaking Farmer Sampson's clothes as he stood by the pig pen, watching them feast. The wet, sloppy sounds filled the air, the pigs grunting and squealing as they tore into meat, fighting over the larger pieces. Sampson wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his fingers streaking mud across his weathered face. He didn't move until the last of it was gone, until nothing remained but the churned up mud and the pigs, bloated and satisfied, snorting softly in the dark. He turned and made his way back towards the house, boots heavy with mud and rain. The porch groaned under his weight as he stepped inside. The warmth of the kitchen wrapped around him like a damp cloth, thick with grease and smoke. Edith was still at the stove, flipping the bacon, the pan spitting and hissing. She didn't look at him when he walked in. Sampson set the empty burlap sack on the counter. The stained fabric collapsed into itself. A drop of something dark slid off the edge, splattering onto the floor. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "That takes care of one." Edith nodded, still stirring the pan. Sampson pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, the wood creaking beneath his weight. He reached for the half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table, took a swig and wiped his mouth. "Gotta go back tomorrow." Another nod. She didn't ask where. She never did. She plated the bacon, sliding it onto a chip dish in front of him. He picked up a piece with his fingers, chewing slowly. The grease coated his tongue, but he didn't seem to taste it. The storm rattled the old farmhouse, wind whistling through the gaps in the wood. Beyond the window, the pig pen sat in darkness. The pigs had already gone to sleep. Edith sat across from him, her pale, bony fingers folded neatly on the table. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the sack. Sampson took another drink, swallowing hard. His eyes were tired, the lines in his face deepening under the dim yellow light. Outside, the pigs stirred in their sleep, snouts twitching, dreaming of the next meal. And inside, Edith simply nodded again. The pigs had settled down, their bloated bodies resting in the mud, their stomachs full. The storm outside had softened, the rain now a steady drizzle tapping against the roof. Farmer Sampson sat at the kitchen table, the whiskey bottle near his elbow, his plate empty, save for the smear of grease. He chewed the last bit of bacon slowly, savoring it, his jaw moving in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Across from him, Edith sat still, her hands folded in her lap, her tired eyes locked on the empty burlap sack beside him. The pigs had eaten well tonight. Sampson wiped his hands on his pants, then looked up at his wife. His voice was steady, calm. "Envy." Edith's fingers twitched, just barely. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. "He wanted what wasn't his, so I took it from him. Took all of him." She nodded, slow and deliberate. It wasn't never a question of if, only who. Sampson ran his tongue over his teeth, thinking about the others. There was a banker in town, one who never missed a chance to remind folks how much they owed him. always walking through the streets in his fine suit, looking down his nose at the working man. Greed. And the preacher, the one who spent more time whispering in women's ears than he did reading from the good book, always wiping the sweat from his brow, a nervous chuckle in his throat. Lust. The sheriff, big and lazy and growing fatter in his chair, letting crime fester while he lined his own pockets. Sloth. The mayor's boy, red-faced and angry, always looking to swing a fist at someone smaller than him. Wrath. So many sins, so many mouths to feed. Sampson pulled his chair back and stood. The pigs would need another meal soon. He looked at Edith, his expression unreadable. Her nod was all he needed. Tomorrow was another day. Tomorrow there would be another sin to cleanse. And the pigs would eat again. The house had gone quiet. The only sound was the slow ticking of the clock on the wall, marking time that didn't matter anymore. Edith had gone to bed, but Father Sampson wasn't tired. He never was on nights like this. Out the back door, he stepped into the damp night air, the mud sticking at his boots as he made his way towards the pig pen. The storm had passed, but the ground was still wet, the air thick with the scent of rain, earth, or something else, something darker. The pigs were awake. They always were. As he approached the pen, the mass of hulking shapes began to stir. One by one they lifted their heads, their dark eyes reflecting the dim moonlight. They grunted softly, shifting in the mud, their ears twitching as they listened. Sampson rested his hands on top of the fence, looking down at them. They had been fed well tonight. He cleared his throat, and the pigs came closer, gathering round him, like they knew, like they understood, like the congregation awaiting their preacher. He let out a long breath, his lips curled into something that might have been a smile, though it never quite reached his eyes. Then he spoke. His voice was low, gravelly, thick with something between reverence and madness. "The Lord, he smites the wicked," he muttered. "He cleanses the earth of the unclean. He casts them down into the fire, or into the belly of beasts." Pigs snorted. One of them pawed at the mud. "Cain struck down his brother, and the Lord set a mark upon him." Sampson's voice was steady, rhythmic, like he had preached this sermon before. "But there are many Cains walking amongst us, ain't there? Sin crawls under their skin, festers in their hearts, and what does the Lord say? They shall reap what they have sown." One of the larger pigs stepped forward, closer to the fence. Sampson reached down, running a rough hand over its bristly head. The pig didn't flinch. "Y'all done righteous work tonight," he said, almost tenderly. "The way of the Lord is clear. The wicked must be washed away." The pigs grunted in unison, shifting closer, pressing against the fence, waiting. Sampson smiled. "Tomorrow there'll be more." He turned, walking back towards the house, leaving the pigs standing in the dark, waiting. Tomorrow was another day. Tomorrow the congregation would feast again. The wind had settled, leaving the night heavy and still. The farmhouse sat in silence, but Farmer Sampson was awake. He always was. Boots sinking deep into the mud, he made his way towards the pig pen, burlap sack slung over his shoulder. The pigs were already waiting. Their bloated forms shifted in the darkness, their wet snouts twitching at the scent of them. They knew. They always knew. Sampson dropped the sack onto the fence post, the heavy weight inside slumping against the wood. He let the moment stretch, standing tall before them, hands gripping the rail like a preacher grasping his pulpit. One by one, the pigs came closer, pressing against the fence, their dark, soulless eyes locked on him. He exhaled, and then, in a voice that rang out over the field, he preached. "And you know that this has to be done?" The pigs grunted, shifting anxiously. One let out a sharp squeal as if calling the others to attention. Sampson raised his hand, his arms stretched towards the sky, his fingers splayed wide like a prophet calling down fire. "For the Lord said, I will sweep away everything from the face of the earth," his voice thundered over the field, righteous and shaken. "The sinner, the corrupt, the wretched, and the greedy, they will be purged, and the land must be cleansed." The pigs exploded into squeals, shrieking and snorting, stamping deep into the slop. He threw his other hand up. "They hoard, they fornicate, they steal, they lie, they corrupt their own flesh, and for what?" His voice cracked, wild, the veins in his neck standing out as he shouted. "Their hands are filthy, their souls are rotted, they will know the wages of their sin, they will be devoured, the flesh stripped from their bones." The pigs went into a frenzy, squealing and clawing at the mud, gnashing their teeth, thrashing against the fence as if they too were filled with holy fire. Sampson spread his arms wide, his face lifted towards the heavens, the warm rain mixing with the sweat running down his brow. "The Lord does not wait, and neither do we. We cleanse, we purge." The pigs screamed, the sound splitting the night, raising like a twisted choir. Their bodies pushed against the gate, their eyes wide, teeth snapping at the empty air. Sampson lowered his hand. The pigs fell silent. Only the sound of the wind remained, the heavy breathing of the congregation, the stink of hunger in the air. Sampson nodded. "Tomorrow there will be more." He picked up the sack, slung it over his shoulder, and walked back towards the house. Behind him, the pigs settled, sinking back into the slop, their hungry momentum stilled. But they knew. They always knew. Tomorrow the sermon would continue. Tomorrow they would feast again. The cleansing of lust. The farmhouse sat in darkness, save for the flickering glow of an oil lamp in the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and damp, thick with the scent of wet earth and something else, something stale and metallic. Inside, Farmer Sampson and Edith stood by the window kitchen table, hands clasped, heads bowed. Their lips moved in murmured prayer, their voices low and steady, the words not from any holy book, but their own, a scripture of blood and bone, whispered through generations of cleansing. The young man sat between them, hands bound at the wrist with thick, twisted rope. His name was Jacob. He was 28 years old. He was terrified. His chair wobbled as he tried to shift away, his wide, panicked eyes darting between the two of them. His breathing was sharp, chest rising and falling in quick, desperate bursts. "You don't have to do this," Jacob whispered, voice trembling. Sampson lifted his head. The old farmer's eyes were dark, steady, not cruel, not angry, just certain. "You know why you're here, boy?" Jacob shook his head quickly, his breath coming faster. "No, I don't." Edith stepped forward. Her face was hollow, her skin thin and stretched over sharp cheekbones. Her hair, streaked with gray and tangled at the edges, clung to her damp forehead. Her lips pulled into something like a smile, but there was no warmth in it.
"Lust?"
she whispered, her voice full of something reverent.
"That's what got you?"
Jacob swallowed hard, his bound hands gripping the edges of the chair.
"I haven't done anything."
Sampson let out a long sigh, as if disappointed. He pulled up a chair, straddling it backward, resting his thick arms on the backrest. The weight of his presence filled the room.
"Lord, don't wait, son," he said. "And neither do we. We seen you."
Jacob shook his head, his entire body trembling.
"Seen me? Seen me do what?"
Sampson's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile.
"Touching on boys."
Jacob's breath hitched. His stomach dropped. He opened his mouth to protest, to explain, but before he could speak, Edith clutched her hands together and closed her eyes.
"Oh Lord, we bring you this wretched soul, this lost sheep who wandered into sin. We bring him not for punishment, but for cleansing."
Jacob's throat tightened.
"Please,"
he gasped.
You don't understand."
Sampson tilted his head.
"Don't we?"
Jacob's pulse pounded in his ears. He twisted his wrists, pulling against the ropes, but they only bit deeper. His fingers burned.
"I ain't done nothing wrong,"
he whispered.
"I ain't never hurt nobody."
Sampson nodded.
"That's what they all say."
Edith's hands trembled as she lifted them skyward. Her voice shook with something that might have been ecstasy or madness, maybe both.
"Oh Lord, let us cleanse him. Let us wash the filth from his soul. Let us purge the stain of his sin."
Jacob twisted in his chair.
"No,"
he cried.
"No, please, I'm not.
Sampson stood slowly. The wooden chair scraped against the floor as he pushed it back. He rolled up his sleeves, his thick fingers flexing, calloused from years of work. Work just like this. The pigs were waiting. Jacob knew. He saw it in Sampson's eyes. And when Sampson reached for the rope, Jacob thrashed, knocking the chair onto its side, his shoulder crashing into the hard wooden floor. He needed to run. He needed to run now. But Sampson and Edith, they weren't worried. They had done this before. And the pigs, they were always hungry. The hunt for Jacob. The chair crashed to the floor, sending a sharp crack through the farmhouse. Jacob hit the ground hard, his breath knocked from his lungs, his bound hands struggling against the ropes. Sampson didn't move right away. He just watched. Edith, standing near the stove, let out a slow, shaky breath.
"He's running, Sampson,"
she muttered, as if it was part of the sermon. Sampson rolled his shoulders, the weight of his massive frame shifting as he stepped towards Jacob.
"The wicked always run,"
he said.
"Makes no difference."
But Jacob was already scrambling to his feet. He could feel his heart beat in his throat, the sound of blood rushing in his ears like a drumbeat. He kicked off the ropes, ignoring the way they burned his skin, and lunged toward the door. Sampson was fast, too fast, a hand thick, rough, unrelenting, clamped around Jacob's wrist. Jacob screamed. He twisted, digging his nails into Sampson's arm, clawing, desperate, and then a sound. Crack! Lightning flashed through the window. A shadow of a figure, Sampson's massive frame, loomed over him. Jacob did the only thing he could. He threw his head back. The back of his skull collided with Sampson's nose. There was a crunch, a guttural snarl of pain. Sampson staggered back. Blood dripped down his face. Jacob didn't wait. He bolted through the door, his feet slamming against the wet porch, the night air hitting him like a slap. He ran.